Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Power Forward podcast. I'm your host, Jackie Rainica, a mindset coach and former Ivy League athlete, here to help student athletes, parents, and coaches focus on progress, not perfection. Every other week, we'll welcome a new guest with relevant experience to share their perspectives and tools to support growth on and off the field. Damon McLean wears many hats, and most recently, he's added father to the list. Huge congratulations. Originally from Jamaica, Damon was a standout triple and long jumper at Princeton University while earning a degree in chemistry. Today, he's based in Atlanta, crushing it in tech at Assembled and as the founder of Soul Sessions and ADAC, both spaces that foster meaningful connections. Damon has been an influential mentor to me and an inspiration, and I'm excited for everyone to hear from him. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Jackie. This is great. I'm excited about this one. It's like not often I get to be interviewed, and I often share my story, but not necessarily in this format. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, you're usually doing the interviewing.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's jump in. Do you mind just sharing your background in athletics, academics, what your parents or caregivers were like?
Yeah, like you hinted at it. I'm from rural Jamaica. It's been an interesting journey when I think about deep rural Jamaica. In fact, my first sport was a sport called cricket. So if any folks in the Commonwealth knows about cricket, that was actually my first sport. And my second sport was actually soccer. So there's a trend there. Eventually, I feel like I was always good. My parents, most folks in Jamaica at that generation, some of them like on my family are teachers, but my mother or father didn't go to college. And so the idea in that time in Jamaica was just like the idea is like education is the key to success. And so that's been like an interesting thing that's been in the back of my head to the point where I got to one of the top, high schools in Jamaica, and so happened that I was actually good at sports and also had a 4.0 GPA. And so that opened up a lot of doors for me, to the point where I ended up going to Princeton, studied chemistry. So I was an inorganic chemistry major, which is crazy. We can talk about that. And made it to NCAAs, made it to All Americans. And then after leaving Princeton, I thought that there was more left in the tank. So the idea was, how can I go how can I go pursue this a little bit more? Because I felt like I focused so much on studying at Princeton that I didn't, give it my all in sports. And so afterwards, that was 2014 when I graduated, the idea was, 2 years, there's going to be the 2016 Olympics. Could I go for that? And so that like trajectory pushed me to training for the Olympics. Eventually, we'll talk about whether I made it or not, but then that led to careers in high performance, transition into tech where I'm at right now. But being 35 now, no longer performance. So we'll talk about that some more.
Many different routes we could go, but how did you make that switch to track and field?
Yeah, there are several things, and this is going to be important for people to talk about. Obviously, this is in retrospect. I am an only child. The thing that I got flustered around, like I was a kid who cried a lot when I lost. I didn't take losing very well. I don't think most people do if you're like truly. And for the most time of my life, especially for soccer, I was a goalkeeper. And there's only so much you can do as a goalkeeper to influence the game. Like obviously you can help to, you can save a penalty or have a great game. But if your forwards don't score, you're still left wanting. And there's two things that happen. One of them was by luck, and one of them was just the nature of who I am. Who I am was, because I'm an only child, I felt I was very individualistic. And so I was very into I am responsible for my results at the end of the day, versus if you're on a team, whether it's, basketball or soccer, where it's 11 people, you're dependent on others. And I found that I didn't necessarily enjoy being so dependent on others for my end of the success. So that was an interesting thing. And so that I gravitated a little bit more to individualistic sports. And you still get that with track, where it's like an individualistic sports, but you still are a part of a team. And the other thing that happened was in my senior year in high school, the options were, it was much easier to have someone look at you for a scholarship for sports, for track than soccer. What I mean by that is like track is a bit more objective. Like either you run the time, you jump the distance. Why soccer is like you have to make game tape, and like it's like Was the team good and all of that? And so that was one of the things that just worked into my favor that like eventually by the time I got to college, it was like, this is the thing that like chose me, but I chose it because it was just it was fun, part of my personality. But number two, it was like easy to show like whether I'm good or not.
It's pretty mature to understand that about yourself and know what you valued at that time in your life. Was there someone in particular that was a role model or kind of steered you in that direction?
Yeah, I had a couple folks. I had two really good high school coaches. One of them was more of like what we call the PE/headmaster, and then he also was our soccer coach, and then the other was my track coach. But before I start the good thing about it, and imagine similar to you or folks out there, is that I had people from my high school leaving to go to college. Like I distinctly remember one of our team captains went to Georgetown and he was like an 800-meter runner. And he would come back every December and
Mm.
summer and be like, man, like college is cool and this is all the cool gear you get. Here's why this is better. Or we were joking earlier about the cold. Like he went to Georgetown. He's like, yeah, man, like I couldn't imagine playing soccer in this cold. And so I had his name was Theon O'Connor, and I had a bunch of folks like that where they would come back every holiday and tell us the stories about what college is like and how amazing it is. So that gave me good perspective. The On the flip side, the coaches were really I remember there was a distinct moment in time when I ended up getting a C on some midterm and my parents threatened to like have me stop the sport. And the coach looked at them and said, this person is going to be successful no matter like where he is. So it's up to you. Like you can keep him, you cannot. Just know no matter what, like he's going to be very successful. And that really stuck with me because there was this belief in me that like no matter where I put my head at, no matter which sport I went into or whatever endeavor, like I have the ability to succeed. And having someone believe in you so early goes such a long way. And so yeah, like that Coach Brown, man, he's been there for so long and he's been such a mentor, father figure for so many people at that high school to help them to like guide them through their journey in this boyhood of whatever high school is for folks.
Thinking now, I mean, you're a new father, but thinking about those coaches and those role models, if I were listening right now and I'm a coach or a parent, what's one piece of advice you would give them?
Yeah, it is layered. The one thing I think about a lot, and I'm sure everyone who's seen this, I was talking to my wife about this the other day, is like a lot of people don't realize what's unique about Usain Bolt is not just that he was so so great at what he did. Is that I can't remember the exact stat, but I think he's one of seven folks who actually won a medal in the junior system and also in the senior system.
Oh, wow.
And so there's like always I don't know how it looks for other sports, but I know for track that there's such a stark drop off from if you go to World Juniors, most people do not make it successfully on the senior level. One of the thing that I think the studies have shown is that like it's the pressure from parents to be great. And so for me, one of the things I think about the joke is that my wife is always like, when are you going to teach your daughter how to jump? And I'm like, I don't know. Like I don't need her to do any of that. And so I think one of the big things we can talk about is like allowing the kid to be their own and being individualistic. Because if you are depending on them to fulfill some dream, that pressure will burn them out. And like you can have a really good youth athlete, but what does that mean? Does that mean that by the time they get to college, they're burnt out and they never want to see the sport? Like, you have to think about that. Like, I know there are some sports, like if I'm thinking about gymnastics, you have to do it a little bit younger. And so,
Mm,
like, yeah, you have to get them in at a younger age. Well, that's one of the things I saw. And so for me, I've told this to a lot of people, sports, my parents didn't actually care about sports. They cared about the grades. And so
mm,
it was almost a trade off of like, I give you the grades and I can get to do whatever I want to do. Um, and it was almost like sports was my reprieve. And so it was self-driven. And because of that, I got to where I think I needed to be. Now, I
mm.
get that not everyone is like me and not everyone is as self-driven, but there's something about not fully pressuring and putting your full expectations on your child. Because when you continue to do that, like it continues, it's almost like they're doing it for you.
Right.
And that's not very sustainable, especially when you go to college, especially when you have 6 a.m. workouts. It's like There has to be something intrinsically that they have to want it for them. And as I said, I've seen it so many times when they have really great youth athletes, but because they were doing it for someone else, or maybe they get an injury or something like that, it's like they no longer want to continue down that road.
And what if, yeah, I mean, I fully agree. I think my parents were very similar because my dad, same thing. So he's from South Africa, so he didn't really know about
Mm.
American sports either. So that was kind of a blessing. Um, but if a student athlete is feeling pressure from their
Hmm.
parents and coaches, and or maybe they're just putting it on themselves, what would you tell them?
Yeah, there are different types of pressure, right? You hinted at like I did both long and triple jump. So I ended up being one of the top triple jumpers in Jamaica by accident. And luckily, there's some transferable skills there. And what I mean is that I was first and foremost a long jumper because it's a little bit more glamorous. Like everyone knows the sprints are glamorous. So it's like 100 meter or two. And I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm a jumper. I'm a long jumper. I was a decent long jumper at best. I wasn't, I was barely making the finals. I wasn't top three. And one of the things I realized I was putting all my eggs in this one basket. To the point where one of my core mottos is like you have to separate your worth from your performance. And like I would have a bad practice and it's like, oh my God, my week, I suck. Like I'm just such a bad person. And I remember one year after going to a national champs and I was like, I can't keep stressing out about this. So my coach was like, hey, there's this other event. It's sort of similar. Why don't you try it? And that way, if you make it, you come to the championships next year, you have two opportunities. You're not going to be like putting all your eggs in one basket. And it turned out I got really good at it that like and it was also a little bit stress free because in theory, it wasn't my main event. It wasn't like my main thing. So I could play
Hmm.
with it and enjoy it. And so that's the first thing. I know it's harder to do in certain things where it's like, okay, if you're a basketball player, could you go in your off season, go play another sport that's not as, maybe it's a volleyball or something like
Hmm.
that. Like that's one thing I always tell folks is like, definitely try to switch it up a little bit because you're young. And it's also like, there's so many different things you can do. I often think if you're really talented in one sport, there's arguably another sport you're going to be talented in as well. So that's one thing that helped me weirdly without even realizing it. And so throughout my career, I've always kept those two hand in hand where it's like I'm not putting all my eggs in one basket. The other thing in terms of pressure is that idea of like separating, finding ideas of worth outside of, the training, the competition, because you can't win all the time and like not every practice is going to be great. And so to the point where even when I got to Princeton, it was really bad. I remember having bad practices and I would be kicking the trash cans and stuff like that. I was like, oh, I'm so, like my friends wouldn't talk to me. And so it took a while for me to unravel that who I am isn't what I do. And so
Hmm.
I definitely didn't learn it that much in high school, but it's like not until college. But if I could go back and tell myself and say, hey, who you are isn't what you do, and could you separate that identity to be in that place? I think those are some of the things I think about. And just in general, like thinking about the pressures of people. And then at the end of the day, as much as it sound weird as if you're in high school or even before, it's always just it's you, right? Because your parents might want it for you. Other people might have expectations for you, but you have to live with the consequences of your action. And it seems like a bold thing, but while they will invest in you and try to make have all the best resources for you, it all comes down to you have to be doing it first and foremost for you. Like you have to want it. So whatever decision you make, they have to respect that. And it is really hard. I
Hmm.
get it. But that's one of the things I always tell folks as well when I mentor high schoolers. It's this is always going to be your decision, and no matter what, and it's going to be hard for parents. Hoping that coaches understand as well, because if you're on a team and you're great, coaches want that. But you know, it's always going to be like that it's gonna come back to it's you, it's your decision, it's your showing up.
Wise words. I know. I wish, like, looking back too, and I've recently looked through old journals and I'm like, I don't even like basketball. I wish
Mm,
I kind of like listened to myself and took a step back in that moment and figured out what I wanted. Yes, I pursued it, but would I have been happier doing a different sport? Who knows,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
peer pressure is one of the things that is hard when we talk about separating your performance from your identity is that if you built up that identity as I am the basketball player, it's hard to separate from that because
Right.
you're known as that, you're popular. Um, and which is, I think, well, a lot of people go to college and they now get an opportunity to separate because you can be multifaceted, right?
Mm.
Um, and so I often tell folks the other story that I often tell folks is I ended up at Princeton and I enjoyed my time there, but there's some times that I question. Like I remember getting hit up by University at Alabama, which was one of the top track schools at the time,
Oh, wow.
and the idea was like, which do I choose? And because I always knew that I was more than just an athlete, that's
Right.
one of the reasons I chose obviously in Princeton, right? Such a great brand. But it's like I often think about putting my identity in one thing and always being seen as one. Like I was trying to not be put into a box from
Mm.
early on. And so it's I know it's like peer pressure, but another example, I think here we have theater. I always watch the movies. It's like, oh, the guy is gonna go do theater or something like that. But something else, like part of it is could you be in different things? And maybe it's not a different sport, but maybe it's debate or maybe you're in the choir. I don't know what else is there, but could you do
Mhm.
additional things to bolster your identity? Because I don't want to negate the fact that like having a really good resume to it helps to get into college, right? Like it's helpful to see that you can handle the workload and you're driven, and doing sports at a high level does afford that. So I'm not saying stop the sport or change the sport. I'm saying could you add additional things that you might
Yeah.
be interested in as well that could help you to not put all your eggs in one basket.
Right, and it's striking such a balance too because you don't wanna overextend yourself, and you
Hmm.
do wanna build your resume and be in every club to get
Yeah.
into the good schools, so it's a really hard balance
Yeah.
that I think it's important, like you mentioned, to have role models or coaches or teachers or parents who understand or just want to listen about what you're going through because
Yeah.
it's different even from when we were in high school and college. I
Oh,
mean, now with NIL too, people are leaving Ivy Leagues, and that was kind of unheard of
I know.
when we
I
were in
know.
school. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting you said, like, one of the things that I realized is different. I don't know how you had it, but I struggled to find really good YouTube clips, coming up, in high school of,
Yeah.
like, good jumpers. Like, there was stuff, but there wasn't, like, tons, right? Like, obviously, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, like, I just was coming up in the 28 to, 2010s. So by the time I got to Princeton, I was still, like, figuring out stuff. And I realize now you can go watch LeBron lifestyle clips. You can go watch Steph Curry lifestyle clips. Like you can see all that there is. You can see people who didn't make it. And I think that's an interesting thing where I think now you have more opportunities to the idea of like not just like role models that are there, but you can see other people's lifestyle. And it is helpful to see, like, obviously for high school, it's like you always, they always tell like, oh, high school is such a small set of your career and your life. But when you're in it, it feels like everything. But it is
Yep.
helpful to go online and look and see like, what are these people doing? Okay. And then weigh the cost, right? Like if I see the odds of like, man, only 1%, I don't know the number of people like play basketball, go to the league, and then you're like, hmm. Okay. And if I want to go to the league, here's where I need to be. Like it's like having some expectations around that I think is helpful. But I think
Mm,
having times have changed, but you can use having this much access to information can be really helpful.
mm. Speaking of tapping into that, have you noticed any new tools or tools you've used while you were going through it that have helped you?
Yeah, one of the things maybe the last right before the Olympics of 2015. Well, when I graduated Princeton, I got a sports psychologist, and I don't know. I don't know if it was kind of taboo to have that um, in Jamaica, and I don't recall if we ever had that at Princeton. And maybe you did.
It was it was available, but it
Okay,
wasn't, top of mind as going to practice every day was, and
yeah,
I think it should be. We're getting
and
we're getting there.
Man, like I think that that would have moved the needle so much. After I started like, wow, there's a whole world of self-talk that a lot of it comes down to not just can you do the work and physically, but were you mentally? Because if I think about back then, if someone had said like, what's one thing that you've like one like mental thought talk is like just understanding flight or flight, right? Like slightly different for basketball, but I imagine it's similar. But for us, it's like when you're performing, sometimes it's one jump, it's one race, it's one hit and go versus a basketball, like you'll have you extended time. So nerves play a big role. And if you don't teach someone that like there's a zone of performance that you need to be in, like if you're under that zone, like you just don't care. And if you're over, like you can actually like psych yourself out. So just like
Mm,
that very thing. And like eventually I learned that and like being able to say, okay, there's this middle zone that I need to be in. And you can find different ways to like get you there. So one example for me is that like if I'm too excited, I take out a very boring book and just read, like I kind of psych my head
oh,
out.
yeah.
And if I'm under excited, I pump up with music. So that's like eventually became kind of like my barometer of like there's this, let's say there's a scale from 1, which is like you're just I don't care, I don't want to be here. And then number 10 is like I am so excited I can't even think straight. You want to be between like 4 and 7, and like that's a sweet spot. And so it's like, how do I be between 4 and 7? And that's actually, even I use that today at work. It's one of the things that really stuck with me. The other thing that helps is like breath work, which no one taught me that. I'm just like, how do I survive 30 years? No one taught me how to breathe, right? Like
It
it's
is
it's
wild.
it's crazy. But so it started with just having to talk to someone and just I think knowing the language and being able to label certain things was so important, right? Like just even is like, yes, I'm nervous, but I'm excited. Just even the reframe of like, just because I'm nervous, that doesn't mean that like I'm gonna perform bad. Being nervous is actually a sign that I'm ready and this is important to me. So even that
Mm,
simple reframe went such a far way. Going to training for the Olympics afterwards, just and I wish I had that earlier because it would have saved me so much headache and probably who knows, there are probably performances that I could have done better in. So I think that's
mhm.
and those that's just like basic stuff, right? The other thing that I did a lot was visualization and journaling, which I think I did some form of journaling, but and it's not necessarily like deep, spread my heart out. Number one, it's just keep track of like how you're feeling on a certain day, right? Um, so that's big. And then in terms of physical, which people get a kick out of that, I distinctly remember the first time I met my coach after college and he said, "Hey, D, we need you to get minimum 60 hours of sleep per week." And I'm like, hmm. He's like, Coach,
Let me do the math here.
I'm chemist from Princeton. I don't get that much sleep. Like, what are you talking about? Like, 'cause I kid you not. I think there are times when towards the end I was getting like 5 hours of sleep, you know, per night.
Yeah,
And no one taught me the importance of like, dude, you need to sleep. Like, it's just the basic. Like, don't even try to optimize anything else. Like, you need to sleep, you need to fuel your body right, and you need to have your mental state. So, I don't think there are necessarily new tools, but it's just building on those fundamentals over the last 10 years have helped me just like, live a balanced life, which I
right.
just wish someone had taught me variations of this in high school.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I don't necessarily blame the coaches or the people who are trying to guide us in that moment because they didn't have the
Mm,
education. Um, but now, like you mentioned, it's so readily available. There's almost no
hmm.
excuse to tap into it. But
Yeah,
when you're in high school or college and you have so many different parts of your life you're trying to balance, it can feel like you just need to push it to the back burner, the things that are important looking back. Um,
that's true. Yeah, it's and it's right. Like I joke, like I'm at 35, so my recovery at 35 is at 15 is different, right?
yeah,
We joke is when you're that age, it's just you try harder and it just goes further. And one of the things I
right,
realize, once you get to this high level, it's less about trying harder and it's more like this small tweaks and optimization. But when you're younger, it's just like every year you're going to improve because you're just growing, right? You're going to have a growth spurt. You're going to just like improve every year. So there are different things to play. Like I remember I had so much candy when growing up. I was like, I don't know why I was eating so much candy, and it worked. It
Yeah.
still worked. And then, I don't know how to put it. Like you talked about the journaling. The other thing that I've come to realize is that like it has to be fun, and I think that's missing in a lot where I don't say like, oh, don't start your kid early. So people always ask me, especially for jumping, because it's very hard on the knees. I was like, you do not want to start them, early on. And it just has to be fun. Like I always joke that like I got paid to go play in a sand pit because every morning I woke up, it was really fun. And like I'd imagine for you too, it's like when you're playing on a team, like it's fun to be around those people. But the moment to stop becoming fun, it makes no sense. And there's studies that shows that like obviously the more fun it is, the more committed you are, and you'll spend 6 hours, on the thing because you enjoy it. And it's like because you spend so much time on it, you enjoy it more. And it just like creates this flywheel versus no one dedicates crazy amount of time to something that they don't enjoy,
Mm.
because it's just never gonna last.
Mic drop. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing now and what's top of mind and where you kind of want to take things.
Yeah, I am on week 3 of paternity leave. I'm like week 3 of 12. So I'm excited about that. Actually started a new series where I'm sharing just like what it's like because you'd be shocked. The studies have shown that it's less than 5% of men or non-birthing parents take less than 2 weeks of vacation of PTO. So it's crazy that like, and
Yeah.
so that's been an interesting. I don't know why I just went down the rabbit hole. Um,
No, it is wild.
yeah. So, baby girl she's gonna be 12 weeks this week, and so it's been just amazing to just get time with her, help to support mom, and thinking about some of these things, right? Like what type of dad, number one, do I want to be? My father wasn't around, so I was trying to think about what type of dad I want to be, and also how can I support her best, right? The good thing is I was telling my wife, I feel like we've both lived really good lives, and like we're actually both only kids, so like we are very content with our life. So it's almost like we don't need her to become anything but herself. So that's just an amazing time for me. But
Mhm.
outside of that, I've been, not only do I work at a startup, but I've been, we've built Soul Session and ADAC, and we're in this figuring it out space. And I don't think a lot of people give enough time to figure stuff out. And so they think once you create something, you have to put a box around it and make it neat and share with folks. And I think it's good because like an example would be for you, Jackie, someone says, hey, like, what are you doing? And it's easy for you to come. Maybe you're saying like, I'm the Oprah for sports for high school. And like, okay, maybe they try to like make that association, right? But what if it's like they people like that versus, what, I don't know, but I'm moving towards this direction. And so I'm taking this time to reevaluate some of the stuff that we've built. And I'm really excited about the spaces. This morning I went to grab coffee and I'm reading this book. It just lit up for me of this idea of like moving from 2D to 3D, right? Like we're in 2D right now, but I'm sure you're seeing with some of the clients that you work with that in a three-dimensional spaces, people are lacking that deep connection. I happen to manage folks at work, and so I've seen what they call the COVID generation come out of college and not know how to interact in a office, and I'm seeing now people who were after that are still struggling with those social interactions. And I can generally say like people do have a greater, better time when they are interacting in 3D spaces. And so, how do I create those environments where people can show up and continue to be there? And then my last thing I'll say is that like with all the AI that's happening, and I use it at work. I like to say the future is human. So how can we become more human in what we're doing? Because there's a lot of things that we might never need to do anymore because AI is going to do it for us, right? Like there's probably a new AI tool that comes that's going to analyze your basketball jump shot that you might not even need a throwing coach anymore or something like that, shooting coach anymore. And so like, what do you do when that is? But you still need to figure out how to work as a team, right? Like
Right.
AI can't teach you how to do that. So those are some of the ideas that I'm playing around with. Obviously, on all the socials that we're just putting stuff out, we're testing stuff out. But really just like main focus is spending time with the baby, enjoying it. And then as the ideas come, try to put that out in a format that fits the idea that I think, needs to come out.
Well, that's very nice to hear that it's okay to just be figuring things out and to play. And I think that's the whole motto of this podcast too. Let's get our kids playing and having fun, and
Totally,
everything else will
totally.
work itself out.
We hope,
Anything
yeah.
anything else I might have missed that you wanted to mention? Where can listeners find you?
I know we talked about this. There's a book, I think it's called Art of Learning by Josh Waitzkin. Really amazing book that I don't know if folks have read. And he has a lot of collaterals for high schoolers as well. That like I read that right out of college and it just blew my mind. It talks a lot about mastery. And then there's a podcast that I go in and out of. It's Finding Mastery by Gervais. I can't remember his first name, Michael Gervais, I think. And so he's done some amazing, at least he has some amazing guests on there. And so if you're thinking about high performance at any point of the ladder, I definitely think you should listen to him. Yeah, I'm on the socials. Yeah, it's Damon McLean or Ashta at Extreme Duck. And then on LinkedIn is where a lot more professional stuff is posted. And then obviously at Join Soul Sessions if you want to check that out. So both are linked. So either one you go to, whether it's my personal or Soul Session. ADAC is what we're building. It's at ADAC Athletic, and that's just the athletic community. Slightly transitioned to try and build some community spaces for alumni groups. So that's in the works, and we're still building on social. So there's a lot we're juggling, and it's
Yeah.
really overarching of just creating spaces that I wanted, and then exploration of, not trying to make it to be the biggest or the best thing, but it's like I felt like these are things that I would want to happen, and giving myself permissions to do things just because. I guess the last thing I'll say on that is if you've lived your life doing things for because it was like an too unexpected end, you never get an opportunity to do things just because you have to,
Mm.
it's like you're always justifying like I'm doing this because it leads to A, B, and C versus just like I am privileged to be able to do things just because at this stage of my life. So I'm excited about it. And then I'll just say the only way you get here is by working really hard when you're younger.
There you go, kids.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I am definitely inspired, and I'm about to go be very productive with my day. Thanks to you.
Awesome.
But good luck with the baby. Enjoy every minute, and I'm excited to talk again soon.
Thanks, Jackie. This has been great. Keep it up. I'm excited to hear the different episodes and who you will have on. Awesome.
Yeah, should be fun.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.